want to welcome everybody to the Thursday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. It is Thursday already. Holy moly. It's good to see Golan and the dude. I want to start off, though, before we get into news. Hulk Hogan died today. And Golan, I'm not sure men had a TV growing up. But
no TV, but I liked Hogan.
Every once a month or every other month, the WWF would have wrestling on. And Hulk Hogan was always on, and he would come out to that song that we all loved. And man, God rest that guy's soul. He was just so much America. It was such an interesting time going because it was like a time when we knew that between right and wrong. That's what Hulk Hogan represented in wrestling, and I guess in the rest of America.
I would say, this was a time when it was really black and white, black hat, white hat sort of thing. He was the good guy. He represented America. He was the good guy. And it was always that same group. It was him, it was Roddy Piper, it was Andre the Giant. And we had the Russian bad guy. We had the Arab bad guy. Like everything was very delineated like an 80s movie. And yeah, he definitely was a major part of my youth. Between him and Ozzy Osbourne, this has not been a good week for my history. I think you said, Judah, these things come in threes, so now I'm really holding my breath. But yeah, quite a blow, especially because, and I don't remember what it was for. I think he just yesterday or 2 days ago sold some big new wrestling thing.
No, it's 2 weeks ago they started it with Eric Bischoff.
No, but I mean the deal. I was just reading about the deal a couple of days ago, and so it was the first time I'd seen him in the press since he was singing and shouting for Trump. And I thought, oh, wow, good for him. New chapter. It's like third act. Here we go. And then a couple of days later, that was it. So, yeah, the Hulkster, man. R.I.P.
Do we know the cause of death? Was it a massive heart attack or something?
I think that's what the preliminary type of thing is. I don't want to go on any rumors, obviously, but they went to his house. He was in distress.
And then he wasn't that old, right? How old was he?
I think he was 71.
71. And by the way, Malcolm Jamal Warner also died. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. So that's the three. And people want to, for some reason,
another major piece of my youth.
But not just a major piece of your youth, a major piece of black culture, which should be black culture, and not just black culture, as men likes to say, American culture, because he was in one of the premier shows of the 19 evers, and that brought in black families into American homes. And sadly, he died. And
who is this?
Malcolm Jamal Warner played the son on the Cosby Show. He played Theo on the Cosby Show.
He drowned in Costa Rica,
he drowned.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we said. That's what we said. The three. But
Ozzy, but that's a big one.
Ozzy's a big one. I'll tell you an interesting story. And it's I used to see him quite a bit. And he wore like 8 bracelets and 8 on each hand. Yeah, they were all.
The word he said?
I couldn't understand the word he said. There was I told Golan, should I share the first thing I met him through his son, and the first thing he says to me is, "My wife is Jewish too." I understood that. I can't even do the accent or whatever it was, but man, he was a special guy, and he welcomed people into their homes, both him and his wife, and their whole family, just incredible people. So God rest Ozzy's soul, man.
And I will say, I won't tell the whole story, but I will just say the night that I met him, it was Hugh Hefner, porn star Ron Jeremy, Kiss's Gene Simmons, myself, and him. And so I won't tell the whole story because it's a wonderful private story. But yeah, that's kind of enough, just who was there.
Man, but most importantly for him, he avoided the boycotts of Israel. He played in Israel, and he's getting attacked online for that from these whack jobs for not being in favor of boycott, divest, and sanction, and playing in Israel. And God bless him for doing that. That dude was the original. He's the OG. To the day he died, he was the OG. And God bless him. He did it his way.
He was a legend. I'm so glad that they put together that final Black Sabbath get-together, going away tribute for him. It was about 2 weeks ago they did it in Edinburgh in the UK, and it was a beautiful event. I had some friends who went. I missed it, but Metallica, I mean, all of the legends came out to pay tribute to Ozzy. So really glad that went down. We're going to miss that guy. His music is incredible. Go out and listen to War Pigs from Black Sabbath or Mama, I'm Coming Home from Ozzy. That's what I kept on thinking. As soon as I heard he died, Mama, he's coming home.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people thought. I got to be honest with you. I didn't know you were that hip on music. But yeah, I was thinking the same exact thing. I used to listen to that song on loop over and over and over again. I mean, it's amazing what music can get you through the good times, through the bad times, bring you sadness, bring you joy. And Ozzy did that with so much. And especially with that song he did with Lita Ford about suicide, it was an incredible song.
Close my eyes forever.
Oh my God. Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I am impressed.
I'm really impressed too, by the way.
Big Ozzy fan.
I am really impressed with you. That song was monstrous, and God bless his soul. God bless all their souls, and I hope the threes are done right now, and three very special people, and especially Hulk Hogan. Go on. People don't realize this, and people often forget this, but obviously that video of him was released, and I don't want to talk ill of anybody, but what I loved was that Gawker released it, and people forget this. Peter Thiel got behind the lawsuit and paid for the lawsuit against Gawker, that rag, and made them go bankrupt.
Yeah.
That was Machiavellian by Peter Thiel, because Gawker outed Peter Thiel. So I
Talking
love
about
that.
Legends. Peter Thiel is a legend. That guy is a gangster too. So his backing of Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against Gawker Media changed the landscape of media. He bankrupted that company that did that to Hulk. So fantastic.
Yeah. Don't
Huge
screw
fan
with
of
the
Peter
Hulkster.
Thiel. Really?
Don't screw with the Hulkster.
Don't screw with the Hulkster, but also don't screw with Peter Thiel. That guy is a G. Love
And
that.
don't-
guy.
And for those of you who don't know who Peter Thiel is, by the way, he's in the same kind of stratosphere as Elon Musk in a lot of ways. He's one of the co-founders of PayPal, also
Right,
one of the big
started out
investors
together.
he's one of the big investors in SpaceX today. And he's the kind of guy who got into Facebook early with like half a $1 million and walked out with $1 billion. So he's just one of those guys who he has a vision, and he sees what's coming down the pike. And that thing he did with Hogan is a perfect example. He saw where it needed to end up, and he figured out exactly how to get there.
Yeah,
He
it was
also
perfect.
did it. He played it slow. They went
Slow and
after him,
elegant,
and he let
absolutely.
He let it sit, and he waited for the right time. And as soon as he saw that opening, boom, he pounced. He backed Hogan and put him out of business.
Yeah,
So,
showing who the real Americans were. But let's move on, though, because I just want to move on to this story quickly, because I'm sure you guys missed it. But Trump went to the Fed today. As the first president, I think only 3 presidents have been to the Fed. The last one was Bush, who went for Bernanke signing in, but wasn't for the reason Trump went. Trump went to see the $2.7 billion construction go on, and, which he then brings up was 3.1. And then there's this back and forth where Powell says, well, that was for a building we have already built. So they already built a building for $400 million. And as they're getting done, Trump says, yeah, he could lower the rate to 1%, and he spanks him on the ass. I'm not kidding. He literally gives him a spank pretty much on the ass, and they walk away. And you talk about gangster and how to deal with somebody like that. That's how you deal with somebody like that. It was very impressive.
It was theatrics, and it was definitely Trump to a T. Again, I always compare. I say Trump, he may be president, he may be a politician, but he is a gangster coupled with a comedian. And this today just solidified that for me.
it's important to note why Trump is trying to get them to lower the interest rate. We have so much debt that if they lower it by a point, that saves us billions of dollars that we're paying in interest payments. The first biggest payment in the government right now, I believe, is our interest. And after that, it's Social Security or whatever. But if we could knock that down, why is Trump fighting for it? He's trying to save this country. He's trying to get rid of that giant balloon of debt that we have, which is going to destroy the republic. So this is not a personal thing. He takes it personally. He pushes this guy personally. But the overall goal is to get rid of our national debt.
Yeah, but debt management isn't the Fed's job. I mean, I'm not saying he's wrong. I like that he's trying to do it, because obviously, yeah, let's bring that stuff down. High rates mean more interest on government debt, but managing the federal debt is the president's responsibility, it's Congress's responsibility, and there's meant to be a Chinese wall between them and the Fed. So I understand both sides of this equation. I happen to agree with Trump on this one. But I also know that, too much cheap money could lead to asset bubbles. I also know that, this is usually done when we're trying to fight recession. And right now, the economy isn't in crisis. This is actually a compliment to Trump's governance. Unemployment is low. Consumer spending is strong. The GDP is growing, even if it's growing slowly. So I get why he's asking for it, but it's actually not the Fed's gig to do that right now.
Well, to take Powell's case, is what he's saying is we don't know yet how the tariff war is going to shake out, and he wants to err on the side of caution. I understand that. And I also understand Trump's case where he's like, let's go balls to the wall.
Yeah.
Lower the rate. Let's rock and roll. We're doing great.
It's not just that, man. To your point, Trump has evidence right now of all the investments he's bringing in. This thing with Japan yesterday was huge. The $550 billion they have to carry American products was a monstrous deal that's not being covered. This is a monumental, monstrous deal that news organizations refuse to cover. We all know what they want to cover, Golan, but they don't want to cover this. And one more thing, there's nothing quite like seeing Trump at a construction site. He's home. And the man knows how to build. It's about time people just say, I don't know how he knows how to build an economy, but he just knows how to do it, Golan.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the Japanese deal is massive. Have we talked about this in the show? Maybe we can inform our audience a little bit. Basically, we're talking tens of billions in Japanese investment into U.S. manufacturing, into U.S. infrastructure. We're talking about semiconductors, battery plants, electric vehicles. I had dinner tonight with someone whose part of his job is international diplomacy, and he revealed to me something that absolutely makes sense, but I'd never thought of it. In Arizona right now, they're bringing in just thousands of Taiwanese. And it's like they're having a whole enclave, part of Arizona, where they're going to be building semiconductors and chips and everything else there. And they're bringing in the people who have been doing it at the highest level for many, many years now. And this is part of that deal. So this is part of not only the Japanese push, but the overall worldwide push that Trump has really started. This tidal wave of money that is coming in from a lot of places. We'll see. Okay, and I'm trying to remain optimistic but cautious. Foreign direct investment doesn't necessarily mean lower rates. Japanese investments can be strategic, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to go that way for the economy. We have to be careful about one being conflated with the other. That's all. I'm just, again, cautiously optimistic.
Answer that.
Well, the Japanese deal is huge. I mean, just the fact that we got them to agree to buy American rice. They hate American rice, and they're going to buy millions of dollars of American rice. That says everything to me. The chips that are being built in is it Arizona or
that one's in Arizona.
Arizona. So it's the chip manufacturers out of Taiwan that they agreed to start building chips here. And we want to build chips here because we need chips for everything, for cars, for military, and all of that.
For everything.
Everybody knows that China wants to take Taiwan. And if they do take Taiwan, what happens to that semiconductor company? So the company itself is diversifying by building their plants here. They're getting a lot of money from the American government to build it here, which is great. All of that is great. But also the underlying risk is we all know what's coming down the pike, and that's China is going to take Taiwan at some point. And I don't think we're going to intervene militarily, and I think they're going to get it.
I disagree. I think we will help Taiwan. I pray that we help.
There's help and then there's intervene. Right now we're helping. We sell them a lot of weapons. But I also did a little deep dive on Taiwan, and they themselves have issues with their military. They don't draft young enough. They're not going in at 18 like we are. Same thing in Ukraine. The Ukraine, I think it's 28 years old.
Well, we brought that up the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So the Ukrainians are not doing enough. The Taiwanese are not doing enough. They are not ready. Their military is not ready. There's a lot more that they could be doing if they really believed that China is preparing to invade that country. What we're doing is we're making it really prickly, where we're giving them a lot of weapons, and China will get it, but China's going to lose a lot as they go for it. And we're not going to intervene militarily. We are going to do sanctions and all that other stuff, and we'll ship them weapons, but that's about it.
We'll see. Look, my wife is half Taiwanese. She's got family over there. It's something that I watch very carefully. Taiwan has been implementing something called the porcupine strategy, which is less about defense because, look, China is China. if Taiwan, which is the size of a postage stamp, is going up against China, then I don't care how young you're drafting, you're not winning that war. China also is willing to throw everybody into a meat grinder like Russia is. So, and they've got 1 billion people. So it's not really the idea of can they win the fight through defense. The idea is it's an asymmetric deterrence model. Basically, it makes China invading prohibitively costly. So that means that they've got coastline like defense upgrades. They've got missile systems that are specifically designed, drone systems like you were talking about, and all these other things that are actually inspired by both what Ukraine is doing, what Israel has done. Israel and Taiwan have a very close relationship, and so they've also learned a lot of things militarily from there. They're doing a lot of military drills. They called up 20,000 reservists. Like, they're not doing nothing, but what they're doing is at least trying to be realistic and not just throwing people in front of an unstoppable machine so they can all die before the island disappears. So if it's prohibitively costly, China at least will think twice, especially if they're deterrence from America, whatever that happens to be.
Okay, so let's move on to the things we'd never thought we'd witness in our lifetime, which is the amount of anti-Semitism that is occurring all around the world. I don't know where it starts. I don't know where it ends, but I know we are deep in the thick of something. Not since the 30s has it been in America, at least, like this go on. And I bring this up, obviously, I'm not even sure which one to go on first, but
there's so many.
I want to go on this thing, because I know men will have a lot to say about this, is Macron today saying that Palestine should be accepted as a state. He's going to go bring this up at the UN. But I also want to bring up something important that most people do not know. So I'm going to give you a few stats about France that most people won't know. Go on. So about 68 million people live there. It's 10% Muslim at least. So that's 7 million Muslim. 51% don't classify themselves as religious at all. And 29% of the rest are Catholic. I'm sure there, obviously there are a few Jews, a few other religions that happen there. So that's the predominant thing. Secondly, 2/3 of their economy is based on tourism. That means essentially they offer zero utility to the world. Zero utility. And I've been saying this forever about Europe. The reason they need this conflict in the Middle East is because it props them up power-wise. Otherwise, what else are they needed for? And you know who knows this better than anybody is Donald J. Trump. When he looks at Europe, he doesn't look at the Europe of 50 years ago or 40 years ago. He looks at the Europe of now. And he says, who are we better business partners with? Middle East. So if Macron, who's got 68 million and more Muslims than are actually in the West Bank and Gaza, or Arabs in the West Bank and Gaza, take him. Go on.
Well, I'm very eager to hear what Mend has to say about this, but I'll just point out something that, I don't know if many people realize. Qatar is basically propping up France at this point. They committed about 10 billion recently into French startups. All the amazing French startups. We know all about the French startups, right? There's like a big thing. French startups? Sure. Tech, energy, health, culture. So they're gonna just pour that money in. They've already put 1.3 billion in just last year alone, and then suddenly, weirdly, after this commitment for 10 billion over the next couple of years, they suddenly had France just shouting from the rooftops about how much they love Palestine and how Israel, can't show their wares at military conventions and Qatar now owns the football team there. They own French properties. They just bought $6 billion worth of French properties. The French actual corporate giants, there's like 4 of them, Vivendi being one of them. Qatar is a majority stakeholder in all of those. I'm sure these are all coincidences, of course. The soft power that Qatar has in France is gargantuan. You're talking about in diplomacy now, in media, in culture, in sports, and everything you can imagine. And you'll suddenly see French news no longer criticizing Doha foreign policy. I'm sure it's all just a coincidence that now he's gung-ho about going ahead and declaring Palestine a state. Just a coincidence. Mend, any thoughts?
France is so lost. So one is there's a contradiction here. They just granted the right for every single Gazan to get French citizenship. So what do you even need a Palestinian state for? You are the Palestinian state.
As
You just
Ben
made
Gvir said
yourselves.
today, actually.
And then the second thing is that as far as a two-state solution, that was tried. It was tried a number of times. Jordan got 78% of mandatory Palestine. There is your two-state solution. Most of the Jordanians are Palestinians. Everyone that lives in Judea and Samaria that's Muslim are Jordanians. Their Jordanian citizenship was revoked after Jordan lost the 67 war. So what are you talking about two-state solution? And then it was tried again with Gaza 18 years ago or 22 years ago when Israel gave them Gaza and said, go for it. Here's your state. Let's see what you do. You do great. Fine. Things will work out great. They did tunnels. They did rockets. So for France to come out, immediate surrendering France to the Germans, the Vichy regime is back in office, for them to come out and reward these guys that committed the worst atrocities since the Holocaust and say, oh yeah, we're going to give you a state. It's just moronic. They're just further committing suicide. So Europe is in deep shambles. It looks like Geert Wilders is the only one who could save that continent, and he's fighting a tough battle, even in the Netherlands.
Very, very tough battle. And Golan, I asked you before the show, and it's something I often talk about, imagine a world with no United Nations. David, who is a big fan of the show, loves us, and I recommend that he watch a documentary called Above and Beyond, and he did. It was about the formation of the Israeli Air Force. And people often think, and God bless Truman for voting Israel with the partition, I don't think they expected Israel to survive. That's just my humble opinion. I can't get into Truman's brain, but there was an embargo of weapons, and there was an embargo on any type of weapon. So they gave Israel part of a region with no weapons to defend themselves. And people don't realize that. That's a big part of the equation. I just wanted to give people a little backdrop of what happened when Israel was granted this, that they were granted with no self-protection going on.
Yeah, and what you just said about everyone assuming Israel wasn't going to survive, that's every day before and every day since. The assumption is they won't survive. The number of times I've been told, let's wrap it up, we're almost done, soon, river to the sea, cleanse this, cleanse that. Israel just somehow keeps surviving. And weirdly, if you look at history, all the people who go up against the Israelis and the Jews, they don't just lose, they disappear from the world. And so, that's fine. Keep betting against us. History is certainly not on your side. But to your point about the United Nations, for those of you who have ever gone over to my other podcast, Jew Can't Handle the Truth, there's an episode called Corrupt NGOs. Check it out. It goes into a lot of this information, not least of which that basically the number of times Israel is condemned at the United Nations, our democratic ally, by the way, is more than all the world's tyrants combined. That means if you think about the worst places in the world, Eritrea, North Korea, Iran, China, Russia, you put them all together, it doesn't even come close. And the United Nations is also, later they apologized, oopsie, even though I still see it on Twitter every day. Because at one point, when a bunch of Arabs were running one of the United Nations conferences, they decided that Zionism was racism, and that was an official mandate that later they were like, no, obviously that's not true, but it stuck because we know the retraction doesn't work. They're also the ones who said we're going to go ahead and strip the Israeli and Jewish names away from places, as we've talked about, and put the Arab name on there, even though it's built on effing top of the Jewish thing half the time. So, no, this organization is deeply corrupt, deeply dirty, and deeply needs to go. So do I, on a daily basis, think about what the world would be like without the United Nations? I pray for it.
Here's the deal. I grew up in a tough neighborhood. And if you go down the street in a bad neighborhood late at night, and there's a whole bunch of thugs hanging out, and if they were to vote whether or not they're going to mug you, they're all going to vote to mug you. Maybe there's one that will say, maybe not, but the most of them will. And that's what the United Nations is. You have a whole bunch of thugs from a whole bunch of despotic regions of the world. These people are tyrants to their own people, yet they all get to sit around and vote. You have the people that are the worst to females, and they sit on the Women's Rights Council. You have the worst human rights abusers, and they sit on the Human Rights Council. It's all bullshit. It's all for play. It's all just for them to slap themselves on the back and say, we're good people, we're doing the right thing, as they do the wrong thing, as they do the bad thing.
By the way, I just want to point out, for those of you who think about why does Israel keep getting condemned, think about the UN General Assembly. That's the actual main body of the United Nations. There are 193 member states in the UN, okay? Not 194 because they don't recognize Taiwan. More corruption. Here you go, China. Here's a little gift. You're welcome. But of those 193, about 130 of them almost always vote against Israel. Okay, that means you're talking about 22 Arab League nations. You're talking about 57 Islamic cooperation nations. You're talking about non-aligned countries like, places in Africa and Asia and Latin America that just always are going against the
Jews.
And
Ukraine.
But you're talking about Ireland and Belgium and Spain and Sweden and Ukraine, and I could go on and on and on and on. The point is that it doesn't matter what happens if all the countries with an anti-Israel voting pattern or bias vote against Israel. Israel can never win a vote in the UN, and so because it's become an activist organization specifically designed for Jew hatred. Basically, now there is no chance if something is raised. Is Palestine going to get accepted? The answer is yes. Is Israel going to get a hand slap? The answer is yes. When they have Genocide Remembrance Day, not a joke, when they put pictures in the main vestibule of the UN, the only thing that they didn't show any victims of terror of were Israelis, no Jews.
So here's the deal. Here's what's going on with the United Nations. What we realize, the difference between previous administrations and Trump's administration, is Trump has come to the conclusion that democracy does not work everywhere. And that's why he's working with Arab dictators and leaders that are doing great for their nations. They're not duly elected. They're not elected by their people. These are kings and princes and all that, sheiks and all the other stuff. And they are thriving. They're actually doing great. Some of the safest places in the United Arab Emirates. And it's in the middle of a very hostile environment. Why is that? Because he realizes that democracy doesn't work. You can't let everybody have a vote in some places, just like it didn't work in Gaza, where they voted in Hamas. And the same exact concept needs to be applied to the international body we call the UN. Not everybody gets a vote. I am sorry. If you're a dictator and you're killing, starving, and doing all kinds of terrible things to your own people, you don't get a vote. You're kicked out, and then you leave the whatever it is, the 15 nations that are sane, they get to vote and they keep each other in check. What happens now is because everybody gets a vote, if there's some tiny little nation somewhere that's despotic, they get to sell their vote. So if Iran or China wants them to vote a certain way, they make a little backdoor deal. Now you have that little nation voting.
Sounds familiar. South Africa sounds familiar. France sounds familiar. I can go on and on. Spain, certainly. I mean, these places, these are, by the way, allegedly. But I think it's quite obvious in a lot of these cases how often that is happening. And some of these places don't even need money. They just hate Jews enough to do it for free.
I heard them talking to some people in South Africa, talking about the 15, I think it was, million people that are going to die because USAID cut off funding. That's the same country that had $2 billion to bring a bullshit genocide case against Israel, but now they don't have enough money to support their own AIDS patients. So South Africa is going downhill, and you'll see it. You'll just see it unfold over the next few years. It's been unfolding.
Let's move on to more stuff. We all witnessed this podcast this morning where it was, I don't know where they found these people. Mend was saying he's an Arab influencer, a Muslim influencer, one of the biggest podcasts. And you had a black girl on the show that said the reason why Hitler killed 6 million Jews was because they deserved it. Now, Golan, I would like to say that she is a minority right now, and she still might be in the minority in America. I'm not sure about that anymore. But definitely around the world, this sentiment is running rampant, and I don't know how to stop it.
First of all, can I just point out the name of his podcast? Am I right? Is it called the Fresh and Fit Podcast? Is that what you sent me?
That's it.
I'm not even sure what to say. I'm stuttering here because the Fresh and Fit Podcast is where they had the quote unquote debate about whether the Jews deserve the Holocaust. Wow. All right. I guess fresh and fit means different things to different people. Cool. So I don't know who this guy is. Men tells me he matters. I believe you. This is a guy who let this person not only let her talk and let the cameras roll leaned in like he was really enjoying it, kept smiling and throwing his head back like he was really having a good time. Eventually asked the question, well, how do we beat them? And then when another girl said, let's kill them all again, he just laughed and this and that. I was listening to it with my jaw agape. Think about if the conversation had been, slavery had been really deserved, or like 9/11 victims really had it coming, or women really deserved rape. It's all the same thing. This is just the same conversation. Would that have made the cut? Would he have nodded along and laughed and boop, 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 boop? This feels to me like when you're talking about how the manosphere, and we've talked about this before, this red pill bro podcaster shitbox manosphere toxicity cesspool, this is what we're talking about.
Don't hold back. Don't hold back.
Look, these frat boy moderating dickheads talking about genocide as if it's a joke is something we shouldn't hold back on. You don't get to use Hitler for engagement. You don't get to pretend neutrality while someone's like, nah, they deserved it. And that's not neutrality. That's complicity. And I don't know who this guy is, and I'm doing my best not to curse. I don't know who this guy is, but this does not fall into the banner of free speech, because in the actual conversation, they were calling for violence against people. To your point, Judah, whether she's in the minority or not, more and more of the young people these days just know what TikTok tells them. And now this guy was on Twitch, where Hassan Piker, a Jew-hating, terrorist-loving guy, is the number one dude on the block and brings on Bernie Sanders and AOC as if we didn't know what side of the aisle they were on. So the more this happens, the more these people spread lies and continue to use this kind of vitriolic language to describe the Jews and to describe how bad Israel is, and people are going on stage at music concerts and talking about killing the Jews and everything else, the more this is going to become normalized, and the more young people believe that what they're being told is true. Some of them are just idiotic social justice warriors who think they're doing nice things. Yeah. They don't know that they are just joining the Hitler Youth. And so we can't be quiet.
Well, this guy is, he calls himself Myron Gaines. His name is Amarul Fadi. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, but his parents are from Sudan.
I'm shocked.
Right. He says he looks black, but he doesn't date black girls or Shaniquas. He goes, that's just a preference. He had Andrew Tate on multiple times after that guy was accused of rape. He has Nick Fuentes, the right-wing Nazi, on many, many times. So, you talk about horseshoe or whatever, because this guy's clearly not a right-winger, but it comes around where the Nick Fuentes, who's a insane Nazi, goes on a black guy's show to bash the Jews. The problem with the girls on this show, so what they do is they have like a little panel and they bring on a whole bunch of retarded kids, and that is the problem. It's the TikTok generation, and these kids are dumber than doornails. They are so stupid. So any of these ideas that haters and fearmongers and just these disseminators of hate, they present, these idiotic kids just go with it because they don't know anything. I mean, they literally don't know shit. So
I want to ask you this question, though, because this is your world. And we talked about it before the show, and I decided let's talk about it a little bit. So I feel like a lot of us are analog at this point. And before the show, we were talking about, we have all seen the images, all of us have seen the images of all the pallets of food that the United Nations would not deliver to Gazans. And all we hear about on the news is that the Gazans are suffering and starving and this and that. We see images of people in tunnels eating the thousands of pallets. I'm not kidding, thousands of pallets. And the UN today is blaming Israel for not allowing those pallets in when we know the United Nations wouldn't take the pallets.
Well, the pallets are in. There's 900 trucks sitting there, and there's God knows how many pallets sitting, waiting for it to be distributed to the Palestinian people. And the United Nations will not cooperate and go pick it up because they don't want the GHF to be in operation at all. So it's kind of like a little kid throwing a temper tantrum saying, I'm not going to eat my dinner. I'm not going to eat my dinner. But they're doing it to the Palestinians that they claim at the same time are starving to death. What's really interesting with that is that I haven't seen any malnourished Palestinians. I've seen Palestinians with, we'll call them Gazans. There's no such thing as Palestinians. I've seen Gazans with genetic defective, degenerative diseases that they claim are starving while their fat, obese mom is holding them. So how is that even possible? and you see the Hamas guys in the tunnels, they're all obese. You see these people going to the food lines, they're all obese. So there is no food issue in Gaza. The food issue in Gaza is that Hamas steals it and then sells it back to the Gazans at exorbitant prices. Why are there even shops, shooks, all of that stuff in Gaza when all the food is being donated for free? Does nobody ask this? Why are you selling the food to the people when it's being given to your people? Why aren't you guys just
at a
giving it out
massive
for
markup,
free?
by the way?
Huge markup. They talk about and they talk about it openly. You can turn on the BBC. They will tell you how much a bag of flour goes for in Gaza. Why? It's all free. It was all given to them for free because Hamas stole it and then they sold it. And that's how they're funding the war machine. And according to international law, if the enemy is stealing food to fund the war effort, you do not have to provide them with food. You're allowed to say, go eat dirt. And that is what they should be doing. The international community all comes out against this. But according to law, and I'm not saying this as if I don't take any of the hardship or the suffering into account. I don't wish suffering or hardship onto the people of Gaza who are innocent, whoever they are. But when the food is being stolen and being used to fund the war, and you have the United Nations just coming out on the side of Hamas, accusing Israel, that's where it gets wonky. Not just the United Nations. When I say UN, I mean the UN and all its member states. The only ones who don't is America. And it's insane. Or maybe Javier Milei and his country in Argentina. Probably
very few. You're 100% right. And it's very few. But go on to his point, and we were discussing before the show, I don't think there's anything Israel could do at this point to change the PR. The narrative has already been set. You look at that thing this morning, right? And the Shoah Foundation, which was started by Spielberg, which is supposed to go into schools and teach them about the Holocaust. Obviously, this is outdated. So many things we're trying to do are outdated. And I love people like Bill Ackman. It's time to put some money into the bucket and fight this. It's something I used to say about Sheldon Adelson all the time, who I loved to death. One of the greatest Zionists, greatest people, amazing old school mobster type guy, Golan, was that he was antiquated a little bit in where he would throw his support. We need, as Mend has brought up, starting a bot farms. We have to get going, not just for Jews, but for Christians and everybody. This is not normal, people.
This is also the same thing we keep talking about, where it starts with the Jews, but it doesn't end with the Jews. The Jews are always the pilot program. Let's use an example. Right now, I think today, at least I learned about it today, that the National Education Association, that's the biggest teachers union in all of America, okay? They decided they were going to drop a little history revision into their latest handbook. By revision, I mean Jewish erasure. Let's use the Holocaust as an example. Mend, do you know who was specifically and primarily targeted during the Holocaust?
Wasn't the Jews?
No, according to the NEA, it was just 12 million victims of different faiths. In fact, in the NEA's new handbook about this particular subject, there is no mention of Jews, none, zero, not one time. And you know what that is? That's not inclusive. It's not education. That's called Holocaust denial with a progressive face. They're just trying to diversify genocide. And this is just the first brick in the wall. For everyone who's cool with it, that's how you get effing morons like the people on Myron Gaines' podcast saying, and for those of you who didn't see it, I'll just quote, "Oh, the Jews must have done something in order to make the Germans want to go ahead and kill them. I mean, it's probably their fault." So that's how that happened.
And the other day we were talking about how all conspiracies lead back to the Rothschilds and eventually the Jews. And it's the same thing with progressives. The progressive causes all sound so great to bleeding heart liberals, and then they come for the Jews. It all leads back there. And I had friends that were Jewish and progressive, and they just felt homeless. They felt politically homeless. They're like, "What are you talking about? We are progressives, but we support Israel. It's the right thing to do." That is the progressive cause. The Jews reclaiming their ancestral homeland, decolonizing Judea and Samaria. That is the ultimate of what you should be standing for if you're a progressive, yet they all turned against them. So anyone that doesn't connect those dots and still thinks that there's hope for the Progressive Socialist Party, as far as it not being this anti-Western complete destruction of everything we have, everything that made the world better. The capitalist system has risen more people out of poverty than any other system in the history of mankind. And you can't tell me that you have a better system that's unproven, that showed us the opposite, and every other jurisdiction that it's been tried in is going to somehow do better. As you said before, it starts with the Jews. I don't even like saying that. I like saying it starts with this insane ideology that usually manifests itself by coming after the Jews, but eventually it comes for America. It comes for everything that we value. It comes for Christianity. It comes for family units. It comes for everything that we hold dear. Next thing you know, they put men into women's sports. All of that.
And what I mean by it starts with the Jews is it's their pilot program. They are going to test the waters with some of these progressive ideas by aiming them in a specific direction. Just look no further than how many Jews, progressive Jews, were brainwashed into becoming anti-Zionist, which basically means anti-Jewish. First, you tell them Israel's complicated, right? It's not special, it's complicated. You teach them to critically examine Zionism, not to look at Palestinian terrorism. You teach them that anti-Semitism is bigotry, but it's not racism. It's not like Islamophobia, which doesn't make sense because Islam is not a race. You teach them that Jews are white adjacent and they're privileged, and on and on and on and on. And by the time you're done, it's death by 1,000 microcuts. And it worked. And a bunch of these idiots now are going to march on behalf of their own destruction, laying their head in the guillotine. And once they saw that it worked, they could move on to the next one and the next one and the next one until we get an Islamic jihadist who's running New York.
I'd like to correct one thing. You said Islamophobia because they're not a race. Islamophobia is not a real thing because for the people who chop people's heads off and hijack all the planes and blow up all the buses and train stations, there's a reason.
It's not an irrational fear.
Well, you guys are repeating go to episode.
Judah said it really well in a previous episode.
Yeah. In episode 5, I'm the one that described what a phobia actually is. I'm flattered. Don't get me wrong.
It goes to what I say. That we're using you as a source.
No. As a writer, that's the ultimate compliment. And I just want to end on with two quick things. Is obviously we can't ignore, since we're in this hole of the 50 Jewish kids getting kicked off of this plane, this Spanish plane. What was it called? The Vueling?
It's Vueling. Vueling is the local. It's V-U-E, but there's no V sound in Spanish. So yeah, it's Vueling. It's the national airline. Also happens to be majorly owned by Qatar, by chance.
Yep.
And man, I know initial reports are this pilot was the one that taught at least 2 of the hijackers on 9/11. It's unverified, so I don't want to say that, but that's the report. And it's also, Golan, as we brought up, extremely suspicious that all their phones were taken away from them and they weren't allowed to show the video of what actually went on. So
100%. They're saying now that they were not just taken away, they were forced to delete footage. But when they interviewed other passengers on the plane, the other passengers said that the flight crew and the pilot's story was pure bunk. And so now we can add to the charges when we sue this airline, or when they sue this airline. They can also add destruction of evidence to the whole thing. And when you read at least here, I'm in Barcelona. So when you read the Spanish media, I was looking at like El País, HuffPost has an HuffPost España, as if that's not bad enough. And, even Reuters, Spanish edition, all this stuff. I look at it. I want to see what's going on from this perspective. Lets me know how much longer I have to live here before I have to flee. And all of them made sure that they really emphasized that the group was removed for conflictive behavior, that they were being behaviorally disruptive, and on and on and on. And every single person they interviewed on the plane seems to say, what? That didn't happen. I think we're going to see, there's a possibility, hey, maybe the Rothschilds are going to own that airline soon. We'll see.
Man, I want to go to you quickly with something, because Hamas turned down the latest. Witkoff rejects their latest counteroffer. And all I could think to myself is, if Witkoff is walking away from a deal at a table, they must have come back with some horrific deal that Witkoff, who wants nothing more than a deal, got up from.
So it's all spurred on by countries like France saying we're going to recognize a Palestinian state. And that tells Hamas, you're winning. Don't give in. And it's worth noting that the proposal that Hamas came back with before this Witkoff turned it down, they handed it to the Egyptians and the Qataris. And the Qataris looked at it and laughed and said, we're not even going to give this to the Witkoff people to give to the Israelis because this is insane what you're asking for. So, and that was their allies telling them, you're just out of your mind. And then they toned it down a little bit. They gave it to Witkoff and he goes, you guys are not serious. And he walked away. So yeah, once again, the only thing that's going to work is military pressure, and they need to go in there. And I said this a million times. It's the sieve method. You strain them, you put them through biometric scanners, you figure out who's who, and you let the good people go to a safe zone and you kill the rest of the bad people or you arrest them. It's also worth noting that Yahya Sinwar's wife, it's being reported that she was smuggled out of Gaza. She's living in Turkey and she just got remarried. So they really need to get their act together, identify who all these people are, arrest or kill the bad guys, and finish this thing. Let everybody else immigrate to
They're
France.
getting close. They're getting super close.
I want to also point out two things. One is we already know that Hamas lets these deals, these negotiations drag on because it gives them time.
Know. The problem is, Golan, not everybody all knows because they go by the Gazette.
The newspaper says they will do the peace deal, but you have to resurrect Elvis, a bunch of stuff that's impossible. And then instead of saying, well, they asked for a bunch of outlandish shit, so clearly it wasn't going to go through, they say Hamas made a counteroffer and then Israel rejected it. That's how they play it in the paper.
That's exactly what they did.
And they do it every single time, and nobody mentions what was in the proposal. By the way, I was listening to the Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer, on another podcast, and he was talking about how this concept that everything in their negotiations is public, everybody afterwards is being interviewed and say, well, he wanted this and I wanted this. It actually is undermining the process. If you think about all the other, and it's happened over and over, all the other people that the Trump administration has managed to pull out of captivity, all the other deals that he's been able to do, you don't even know what's happening until they announce, by the way, that reporter that's been held in Russia for 10 years is coming home. You're like, oh, I didn't even know we were talking about that, because that's how these things are supposed to play out. The fact that they are being done in public actually is designed, to give information, because where's their intel coming from? The news. That's it. We, the Israelis and the Americans, we've got an amazing espionage infrastructure. The Mossad is embedded everywhere. We're figuring stuff out. They watch the news. And so why is this being publicized in this way? Specifically to give them an edge. On top of that, but the other thing that he said, and I think it's really important to remember this too, is a lot of people, especially the progressives, are saying, make the deal, get out of there. Later, when they break the ceasefire, which they will, we'll be able to go back in and finish the job. And that way we'll at least have all of our hostages.
That was the deal that was made for Gaza.
That's what I'm saying.
World body told Israel with Gaza is pull out, give it to the Palestinians. And if they don't build a nice flourishing state, and if they turn it into a militarized zone, the entire world will be behind you. And here we are. 20 years later, it's exactly what happened.
Okay, so let's just finish this up. We managed to make it through a show without talking about Epstein. Men, we'll get to your Kaiser stopping gender-affirming surgery for minors tomorrow.
Actually, I wrote a correction. This is from NPR reporting that Kaiser Permanente here in California is going to stop doing gender-affirming care surgeries for minors. And the correction is, Kaiser's to stop gender-affirming surgeries for minors, leaving confused trans kids with fewer options to have their weenies chopped off before they're old enough to make life-altering decisions. There, I fixed it for you, pedos.
Okay, thank you. And Ghislaine Maxwell was interviewed by Todd Blanche today. Great.
Great.
Golan liked my joke today. If you say the Epstein files 5 times in the mirror, you'll end up in the Epstein files. But I just want to end up with this because Men brought something up quickly, and he brought up the horseshoe, which is somebody like Nick Fuentes ending up on these shows talking with Kanye and all this stuff. And Golan, I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse in MAGA world right now. I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse with the influencers. I think they realize, many of them, that they did screw up. And they realized themselves that they ended up in the horseshoe. Benny Johnson, a few of the other ones have realized, what the hell did we do? We are now with them. I don't think we saw it coming. They did not see it coming, that they are aligned.
I want to know why you think that. Tell me what makes you feel like they have seen the light and realized that they stumbled.
Because I was watching an Alex Jones video yesterday.
Already a good start.
And I know it was 3 minutes too long, But Alex Jones was talking about the Epstein thing, and he was defending Trump, and he said he knew this was going to come back on Trump and this and this and this. So he sort of totally veered off his thing and saying, how he predicted, because he's a prophet, that this would happen. And I don't think they realized the boomerang effect this would have. And again, Rasmussen and Trafalgar, the two most reputable polling firms in the country, still have Trump at 49 or 50% approval rating. So this has hurt nothing. But it's just the feeling I'm getting where they realize what hell they unleashed on us. Go on. I could be wrong.
I hope you are right. I think some people may have realized they got played, but the problem when you're talking about people in the public sphere is that admitting something like that is nearly impossible. Right. I told a story a while back.
Well, they'll never admit it.
No, sure. But I told a story a while back about college students who right after October 7th were like, I don't know what this is. I've never heard of Gaza. I don't know where it is, where Israel is on a map, but I'm being pushed pressure-wise to mention something on social media about it, which side I think is right. So because they didn't know, they waited until someone who seemed confident commented. The only ones who seemed confident were the ones who were just jihadis, who were they were ready and poised and ready and probably had the information before the attack was launched. And so they saw those people were confident, so they posted what they said. Later, when they realized, and this is from interviews with students, later when they realized they had been duped and Israel was the victim and the jihadis are jihadis, they didn't retract it. They didn't say, oops, I made a mistake, because it would have made them look like a follower, like a fool. So instead, knowing they were wrong, they doubled down. And after a while, they forgot they were doubling down and started lying to themselves. And then it became their actual personality. And these guys are in a very similar boat, except now with tens of millions of followers who are going to look at them askew if they ever admit they got duped. I'm afraid they're going to keep doubling down until either A, they believe it, or all of their masses that follow them do. And we're in the same boat, even though they realize they got.
The reason I bring it up, and how dare you ever question my acumen and my connected dot pointing, is you're seeing people like Steven Crowder, who just went off on Candace Owens today. It was the funniest thing. It was really funny. He's like, Candace doubling down. And he's bringing up all the evidence the Macrons have actually. So the Macrons,
because you know that she's doubling down, right? That she's decided I'm going scorched earth.
Right. She's going, and so she doubled down. And Crowder brought up how they showed her all the evidence, how they've sent all the evidence to her. So I could be wrong. I think there's one thing people like Benny Johnson and Bannon and they all need is access. And without the access of the big guy, they're screwed. And they screwed themselves. And that's just my humble take on it. I could be wrong.
It seems like a lot of those guys were paid off by Qatar. I don't know what Benny Johnson's deal is. For a while, I thought he was kind of like closer to a Charlie Kirk type.
Me too.
Right?
Me too.
He seemed very clean cut and seemed like he knew what he was talking about. And then this, and you're like, oh no, he's just willing to have anyone on. He's willing to just not ruffle any feathers. So Candace, he's still good with Candace. He's still good with whoever. So I've written that guy off. I don't know if these guys have buyer's remorse. I think that they've realized, or they're realizing, they don't have as much influence as they thought they did. They thought that they could sway Trump not to attack Iran. They thought they could sway Trump or hurt him with this Epstein thing. And it seems like he's navigating it pretty well now. And as far as messaging goes, the White House put out a communique saying that all messaging related to Epstein must go through the communications department, which is great. They all need to get on the same page, because I feel like Trump wants to release all that stuff and he just wants to get past it. And he doesn't think there's much there anyway, because he's seen what they have so far. But if they could get their messaging right around it, that's how you get past it.
As I've said to you many times, and I'll say it for the 1,000th time, their messaging is often horrific. Carolyn Levitt is excellent at her job. Messaging is not one of her.
No, you had the answer. She needs to move that thing to 9 p.m. every night or whatever it is. And primetime, 5 p.m., whenever the primetime news comes on, that's when she should be holding her news briefings. That is the answer. Judah for the win on that.
That is absolutely one of the more brilliant things. I always say the $1 million idea is when you hear it and you're like, I could have thought of that. but nobody did. This is the $1 million idea. It seems so logical and so natural, and nobody thought of it until Judah did.
I was bound to come up with one. Okay, on that note, I want to thank everybody out there for helping us. And from the bottom of our heart, go on with the editing. Men, just for showing up and looking good, sounding good sometimes. I want to thank everybody for listening to us on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast, Daily Cheat Sheet, Substack, The Daily Cheat Sheet, YouTube, The Daily Cheat Sheet, X at TD Cheat Sheet, and Truth, The Daily Cheat Sheet. You could also follow Golan. You can follow myself, and we actually do interact. So it makes it a lot more fun for the poster sometimes. Don't get on Golan's bad side. I want to wish everybody a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are. God bless you all.